My name is Dr. Jack Lewis. I'm a neuroscientist, and I'm on a journey to understand everything there is to know about the human brain. The human brain is the most complex part of our body. Many mysteries remain about how this most vital of vital organs controls every aspect of our lives. But over the last few decades, our knowledge has expanded in leaps and bounds.
That was a shock to the system.
Now we're getting ready to push it to the limits, finding out how our brains react to unusual conditions and surprising challenges.
This is the strangest experience of my life.
Let's do it. I'm setting out on a journey. A journey to meet some people with remarkable neurological conditions.
One of the most common questions is, how is it wired to your brain?
That give us a unique insight into the inner workings of the brain.
I discovered people who are able to remember almost every day of their life.
In this episode, we'll mess with your mind to explore the mysterious relationship between our senses and our brain.
I think you're thinking of paprika again, is that right? Yeah.
We'll find out how our senses can work together in unusual ways. Tell me what you're tasting.
I fixed an apple.
Imagine if all your senses were cross-wired. We'll join a woman who wants to find out why the sounds around her cause her to see colours.
Sometimes I will just sit and listen to some music and just enjoy the shapes.
And I'll meet an extraordinary man who can taste the words that he hears.
Bond Street.
I'm sorry.
It's a bit like having something like hairspray sprayed right into your face.
And with the help of magician Pete Heat, you'll see just how easily our senses can be fooled. What's going on deep inside your head? Join me to uncover the secrets of the brain. Our senses are incredibly important. They're our sole connection with the outside world. It's impossible to imagine what life would be without them. Every sight, sound, taste, smell, and touch stems from a flurry of activity shared between innumerable brain cells. How our brains process this information ultimately governs our view of the world. But a question that has baffled scientists for centuries is, do we all experience the world in the same way? Well, in the last couple of decades, researchers on the frontiers of neuroscience have been investigating an extraordinary condition, which confirms, at least for its sufferers, that reality is completely subjective. I'm off to meet someone who sees the world in a very unusual way. Meet Philippa Stanton. She's been an artist in residence for the Shakespeare's Globe and exhibited her portraits across Britain. And the inspiration for her art is like no other. She has a remarkable neurological condition, which has perplexed neuroscientists for years. It's called synesthesia. But what is this extraordinary condition? Well, the term synesthesia roughly means blending of the senses. And baffling as it may seem, Philippa can actually see aromas, tastes, and sounds, just as we witness the visual world around us. Meaning she's probably the only artist in England who can paint a still life of a smell. Just the taste of coffee creates visual impressions, as do the sounds around her.
Sometimes I will just sit and listen to some music and just enjoy the shapes.
Now, I've been fascinated by this condition for much of my career, so I can't wait to talk to a real-life synesthete for the very first time. Hi, how you doing?
Good.
Lovely to meet you. So I'm very excited. Let's kick things off with how Philippa experiences a cup of coffee. The smell alone makes her brain create very distinctive visual images.
So if I smell this, that has a much more moving, full shape. But if yeah, so the taste, it's got an element of that, but it's got edges.
Could you give me an example of a type of specific sort of visual overlay there'd be in your experience?
So I've got a lot of taste. This is a taste of a coffee, which obviously has completely different dynamics from an aroma, because the taste, oh my God, when I'm explaining it, it's so difficult because I think, well, that looks obvious, doesn't it?
Well, there's a square within the square.
So the square within the square here is you have that first element of tasting the coffee, and you've got taste, and then you hit the bitterness. You don't get the bitterness with the aroma.
Now, obviously, seeing a smell is a difficult concept to grasp. So perhaps it's not surprising that synesthesia used to have the scientific community divided. But now, neuroscience knows that a synesthete's brain is actually physically different from everyone else's. And that's why Philippa has experienced these interesting symptoms for as long as she can remember.
I remember when my parents were having a party downstairs and I couldn't get to sleep. And I worked out this method that if so I listened to what was going on, rather than thinking, oh, I can't get to sleep. I listened to what was going on and sort of counted the shapes of what it was, and then fell asleep.
A synesthetic person's version of counting sheep. Was there ever a time or a moment in your life where it was all just a pain and it was causing trouble?
I didn't think it was, and like I've said before, this was all part of my life. As a teenager, I had epilepsy, and I think it was always a very visual experience just before I had a fit, and if I had a fit, it was often on the back of kind of lots of stuff going on, and I believe, and there's no scientific proof of this, my senses haven't separated in such an acute way as yours might have. You've kind of separated them, whereas mine have stuck together. There's so much going on in there, and particularly as a teenager, too much to process. As I've got older, I've found channels to I found painting.
Is painting actually a method of taming all of the cacophony of sensory experience?
I don't know about, maybe taming or channeling at least. And I go, at least I've got this outlet. I go, this is what's going on in my head here, and that goes there. But it's a way of channeling what's going on in my brain.
Later on, we'll join Philippa as she meets a leading specialist in synesthesia.
And what I'm interested in is what you're kind of seeing when I play some sounds to you.
With a view to shedding some light on her marvellous condition. Is it possible for us to see the world as Philippa does? Well, maybe. But it's also possible to show how our brains see colour in ways you might not expect. Here's Pete. He's looking slightly weird, but bear with me on this. I need you to focus on the X on his forehead. Focus as hard as you can for 30 seconds. Keep looking at that X. In a few seconds, I'm going to switch the image to black and white. But using the power of your brain, you should see him in full colour. 3, 2, 1. Did you see that in colour? Well, it may have faded now, but it was black and white all along. Remarkable, isn't it? The image we showed you first was a photographic negative, and by looking at it for so long, you tired out some of the light receptors at the back of your eyes, so that when we then showed you the black and white image, your brain created the false impression of colour. Pete, you're incredible. Thanks. Clearly, the relationship between our brains and our bodies is more complicated than you might think. But how can we explain synesthesia? Why is it so extraordinary? Well, to understand how unusual synesthetic brains do experience, first, we need to understand how normal, everyday brains do it. Every day, our senses gather millions of details about the world around us, feeding our brains with a constant stream of information. By interpreting those signals, we can feel the lightest touch and hear the quietest sound. The perceptions generated by the brain from these sensory inputs are our only link with the outside world. Every experience we have is entirely shaped by our senses. All these sensations are then carried as electrical signals to your brain, which actively extracts useful information, with different patches, each specialised to perform a different function, yet working together to produce the whole picture of sensory experience. But one central question in neuroscience is, how do a bunch of interconnected neurons make sense of a chaotic stream of information that pours in huge quantities every second? Well, it's a kind of magic. This constant barrage of sensory stimuli would easily overload the conscious brain if mechanisms didn't exist to filter out the less important stuff and focus only on the information we really need. We're doing this the whole time, sorting, selecting, categorizing data into patterns that make sense. Magician Pete Heat is about to give us a reminder of just how remarkable this process really is.
Right, I'm going to show you something involving the senses, and by that I mean sight, sound, smell, touch, and so on. And obviously we're at a station, a really kind of hectic place, lots of sights, sounds, people moving around, there's a lot to take in, right? And that is that's kind of what this trick is about. If I start with these cards, and I'm going to mix them up like this, okay? So I'm going to shuffle them all up. And what I want you to particularly notice is that the colours are mixed up. So we've got reds and blacks. So for example, sometimes there'll be one black one, one red one, like there. Sometimes there's a load of black ones in a row. What I want you to do is to sort them into two piles face down. So dealing one card at a time into two piles. And I want you to sort them into the two colours without looking at them.
Oh, without looking at them?
I forgot to mention that.
Blimey, I was like...
Yeah, so obviously I don't expect you to have actually memorised that when I spread through that. I want you to just feel it. So just kind of sense it. Obviously they don't feel any different. They're not special cards that feel different. I just want you to literally just go use your intuition.
Okay.
What Pete is intending to demonstrate is that our subconscious brain is sorting massive quantities of information without us even noticing it.
It's up to you. Is that red or is this bar red?
This is red.
Okay, are you sure?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Without us even trying, all the relevant data should fall into the right place.
Okay. Now, if you think about it, this is completely random because it is a shuffle pack. You helped shuffle it. You've exactly dealt them into two piles without counting them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? Which one did you say red?
This one's black and
this one's red. Okay, right. And you could have decided it was the other way around though,
yes,
right? Yeah?
Yes.
But you decided that this bar was black and that this bar was red. Okay? And that this bar was black and this bar was red.
Yes.
Black, red, red.
And the results we receive back are a perfectly coherent picture of the world.
Every single card, so black, red, black, red. Look, every single card that you touched was exactly correct. Red, black, all the way through. Red, black.
Genius!
You won't do that. I won't waste any more of your time. Look, the whole pack, all the way through.
I can put reds and blacks in different piles without even knowing it.
Trying hard.
But even though it's so ordered, I don't understand it. Here, there is just so much happening that in order to be able to cope with it, we make sense of it in our brains. It's a very minor superpower I have.
Our brains are tirelessly sorting 100 million impulses every second, so it's not surprising that they occasionally make mistakes. Take a look at this. Which of the squares on this board, A or B, is the brightest? Seems obvious, doesn't it? It must be B. It's never going to be that easy on this show. In fact, both squares are the same brightness. You don't believe me, do you? If we take away the background, ta-da! You can see this is entirely true. We didn't change the illumination, your brain did. This is the checkerboard illusion. Here's another. This bar seems to change in brightness all across its length, but I'm sure you know what's coming. Take the background away, and you'll see that it's just one shade all the way along. These illusions show just how our perception of a scene is often our brain's interpretation of the world rather than reality itself. That little test makes an important point. Our brains are hugely selective when it comes to the information our senses make us aware of. And to make matters even more confusing, sometimes our brains can reach a conclusion before our senses have even really had a chance to get to work. People generally think of their senses in isolation, but neuroscience is particularly fascinated by how they interact with each other. In fact, taste is so heavily influenced by all the other senses that what our brains actually experience can have surprisingly little to do with what our taste buds are up to. I'm setting up a shop in a food market to demonstrate quite how easy it is to trick our sense of taste. I'm mixing 3 flavoured drinks with colours you wouldn't normally associate with their taste. The question is, will their preconceptions about colour throw our punters off the scent? So let's try this one first. Have a little sip and let me know what you think of it.
Cherry.
Cherry?
I think, yeah.
It's like cranberry. Oh, blueberry?
A little bit of bubblegum.
Bubblegum?
Yeah, a little bit.
It's because it's green, you want to say lime, but it's just not lime.
Subtract that limey expectation.
Yeah, it's hard.
And hit me with what it really
You
is.
taste with your eyes as well. I don't know what that is.
Okay.
I can't, sorry. I don't
So
know.
it could be because you've never seen a green strawberry. This one, which you thought was cherry, is actually lemon and lime. And this one here, which you thought was bubblegum, is in actual fact orange and peach.
Okay, very deceiving. It's very deceiving.
And you realise how strongly you're affected by the look of something, what you expect it to taste like.
And as if the situation wasn't already confusing enough, depriving certain senses can fool our poor taste buds into reaching the wrong conclusion altogether. As you can see, here we have a bowl of fruit, which gives you a clue as to what sense we're going to be stimulating. We're going to see what taking away some of your senses does to your perception of taste. So if that's clear and you're ready to go for it, should we get underway? In fact, what we think of as taste is powerfully influenced by all 4 of the other outward-facing senses. Surely, though, if we deprive our volunteers of sight, smell and touch, they'll still be able to detect that most volatile of vegetables, the tear-inducing onion. Can you identify this flavour? OK, so tell me what you're tasting. What's your first suspicion?
I think it's an apple.
What does that taste of?
Is it an apple?
Let's bring some of the senses back one by one. I'm just going to give you your sense of smell back. Do you want to take another bite?
Yeah, it tastes different again now.
Have one more bite and see if you can figure out what it is you're eating.
No, I really can't tell.
OK, and that's because the most dominant sense in the human brain is vision. Can you tell what you're eating now?
Yeah.
If I had told you in advance that I would be able to make you think biting into an onion was actually an apple, presumably you'd have said no chance.
Sure, yeah, initially I would have said no chance, yeah.
Does that surprise you?
Yeah, because I thought, obviously you've tricked me into thinking it was something else, but yeah, it really does surprise me actually. I didn't think that it would be make that much of a difference, but it really did.
The sense of smell is really important for taste. The tongue can only actually detect salt, sweet, bitter, sour, and that kind of meaty taste of umami. But ultimately, if you want to really know what you're tasting, the sense of vision and smell are profoundly important. And it's this marriage of the senses which distinguishes taste from flavour.
So flavour is itself almost like a sense, even though it's an amalgam of 2 other basic senses. And I think this is one of the things that makes it very interesting. And even our sense of flavour is also multisensory in other respects. So what we see in our food, such as the colour and the sound that our food makes, the texture in our mouth. This is all of our senses coming together, and for me, that's what makes flavour and what we metaphorically call taste so interesting.
So, what have we learned so far? Well, if your senses play tricks on you, it's perfectly reasonable to blame your brain. Both Pete's trick and our onion-eating volunteers reveal similar things. Not only is the brain incredibly selective about the information it receives from your various senses, but it can sometimes reach strange conclusions when it doesn't get all the sensory information it needs. But imagine if the process of sensory sorting worked differently, and information you received in one sense triggered responses usually associated with another one. Artist Philippa Stanton was born with an extraordinary neurological condition called synesthesia.
I don't think it's any surprise at all that creatives have synesthesia.
Her condition provides an incredible inspiration for her art, but she suspects that her brain might have developed differently from the rest of us.
Because I always imagine, you know, the senses to kind of split off and do different things. I always think mine have stuck together somehow.
In an attempt to get to the bottom of this multisensory mystery, she's decided to seek help from a specialist neuroscientist.
But there's part of me that thinks, well, what if you don't find anything there, right? That doesn't mean that this isn't going on in my head.
She's meeting one of the world's leading synesthesia experts, Professor Jamie Ward.
So I understand that you kind of experience colours and shapes to voices and music?
Yes, yeah, and textures.
Textures as well. Right, let me explain to you what we're going to do today. So these are a set of colours, and you can see that they're kind of arranged in this systematic way, going from dark to light. And what I'm interested in is what you're kind of seeing when I play some sounds to you. So we're kind of interested in the full caboodle. So not just in the colours, we're kind of interested, I guess, to think about how you would visualise this in your mind's eye. So should we start? Yeah. Okay, so if you want to kind of position yourself here, and I will play some sounds, and I'll make a note of whatever colours you choose.
Professor Ward will play Philippa a variety of pre-recorded vocal tones, to which Philippa is matching colours. Unlike us, whenever Philippa hears one of these sounds, colours and shapes appear in her vision. Whilst most of us are able to form a loose opinion of which colour should correspond with which sound, people with synesthesia are able to consistently connect the same very specific visual attributes to specific sounds over repeated testing.
2.5 RP.
It would be nearly impossible for anyone to simply memorise such a vast number of arbitrary connections.
The colours you choose tend not to vary very much over time, but they do vary according to the different sounds. So your oohs tend to be bluer. So this is your kind of range of blues, whereas your air sounds tend to have a bit more yellow in them. But the males are always kind of darker and more purpley. I don't know if this is something you're aware of. Yeah, it's the pitch. So this is really interesting, because what it's telling us is that there is something systematic about your synesthesia. So your colours are very precise, they're not changing over time, but actually nor are they random. There are certain rules that kind of govern what things sound like, depending on the voice and depending on what is actually being said by the voice, what the kind of vowels or the particular sounds are that you have.
So how is a synesthete's brain different? Deep inside our brains is a structure called the superior colliculus. Its job is to process information from our sensory neurons. This way, it can triangulate external stimuli to help you orientate your sensory apparatus, like your eyes and ears, in the correct direction towards the stimulus. But Philippa's brain seems to be wired differently. Her superior colliculus appears to be larger than the rest of us, which means she's likely to have a greater number of neurons in that structure and, perhaps more importantly, more connections between them.
So if anything, synesthetes' brains differ, but actually they differ in the sense of having more grey matter, more connectivity. So it's not a loss, it's not a deficit.
I think I have always thought that there was maybe something slightly missing or slightly underdeveloped in my brain. Synesthetes have apparently more grey matter as part of their brain. I was surprised about that.
Having discovered that her brain works differently to the rest of ours, Philippa is eager to learn how to make the most of her talents. We'll join her later as she meets another synesthete.
I saw your coffee pictures and that feelings that you evoked made me kind of quite joyful.
Could understanding Philippa's condition give us insight into our own brain? Well, some neuroscientists believe that one day we will all, in future generations, evolve to become synesthetic. And that journey has already begun is evidenced by some of the things that happen when our senses work together right now. For example, when you see a bright light and hear a loud sound, your brain immediately assumes they're causally related. Have a look at this. Two balls moving across the screen, but what do you see? Most people seeing this illusion for the first time would agree that the two balls are clearly whizzing past each other. But look what happens if I add a simple sound effect. How cool is that? Straight away, almost everyone will agree that the balls are bouncing off one another. This is multisensory or cross-modal integration. Presenting a sound at exactly the right moment fundamentally changes your perception of exactly the same visual sequence. Think you've got it? Check this simple trick out. Pete is about to make this shot glass disappear. Now look again. Whilst your attention is on the coin, what's happening to the shot glass? Because you see what looks like the shot glass being tapped on the table at exactly the same time as you hear the sound of glass on wood, your brain combines the sights and sounds together to create the false perception that it's still under the napkin. Clever man, that Pete. But how much can one sense really change the experience of another? Although it's easy for us to understand the concept of synesthetic symptoms, for those of us who don't have the condition, short of taking some kind of hallucinogenic drug, it can be really difficult to properly imagine what the world would be like with the senses so jumbled up. But there's one revolutionary chef who loves nothing more than to toy with our multisensory experiences. Can music and texture really trick your mind into thinking food actually tastes different? Can the taste of a meal change depending on the nature of our environment? I'm about to enter the strange world of multisensory gastronomy. Super chef Joseph Youssef believes we are all synesthetes when it comes to eating and drinking. In fact, he's so convinced that he's set out to prove it. He's joined forces with Oxford University's Department of Experimental Psychology to create the Kitchen Theory Project, a bid to create the ultimate tasting menu designed to show that multisensory experiences are available even in a non-synesthete like myself. So Joseph, what are you doing here?
Well, we're putting together a few courses for you to try out from our Synesthesia menu. And the idea being, we want to see if we can in some way, augment, tweak, alter your perception of the tastes, mouthfeels, and flavors that you're going to experience. That's really what this is kind of about.
Cool.
What we're looking for is really to see if some of the sensory tools that we use today will in some way alter your perception of the dishes. So in many cases, I think you'll probably taste the dish without any sensory cues, and then we'll kind of add those in through sound, touch, smell, aroma. Yeah.
Ooh. While Joseph cracks on with the multisensory tasting menu, I've invited a very special guest to join me for this extraordinary lunch. James Wannerton is a synesthete, and like Philippa, his senses interact unusually, but his specific symptoms are very different.
Colour is set for our synesthetic experience.
Every word James hears and reads, not to mention the general sounds of the world around him, creates strong flavours in his mouth.
I get inputs from all sorts, from sound, from colour, from touch, and it all adds to the flavour of whatever I'm eating.
For example, James experiences specific taste sensations upon hearing the names of each different London Underground station.
Bond Street. I'm sorry.
It's a bit like having something like hairspray sprayed right into your face.
Right. St Paul's.
And that's not too bad, actually, because St Paul's gives me the taste of similar to Sprouts.
In your synesthetic brain, it actually enhances the tastes that your brain is conjuring up as a result of the sounds that you hear.
Yeah, see, it's a really weird sensation, and sometimes actually eating the real food is a disappointment because the synesthetic tastes are a lot nicer.
So it must feel like you're constantly eating.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Does that affect your appetite?
Appetite is a bit of a foreign word for me. If I'm hungry, the only way I know is if my stomach makes loud noises.
No way.
Also, if you know, if I haven't eaten for days, and I have done that, I feel very, very weak. But I've got no drive to eat food.
Let's hope he's still hungry enough for our edible experiment. But before we tuck in, we're already aware that our sense of taste has a very strong relationship with the rest of our senses.
Can you tell what you're eating now?
Which is something that magician Pete is keen to exploit.
Hi guys. All right. You may have noticed that between us is a little table with a selection of spices on it.
He believes that if we were to have a sixth sense, taste would have strong associations with that one too.
I'm going to ask you to come and take a tiny pinch of one of them. It can be any of them. Just a tiny little pinch. And put it on your tongue so you can taste it. So we're going to start with the sense of taste, basically. I'm going to turn my back first. When you've done it, because it's quite noisy in here, just shout, done, okay, right, so I can hear it. So I'm going to turn away, and you do that now. Just a tiny little pinch.
Done.
You done? Okay, brilliant. All right, okay. Now I want you to concentrate on what you can taste, and if you can, really kind of amplify it in your mind. Just really concentrate on that flavour and sort of focus on it. It's quite a sort of like an earthy, seedy kind of taste, and quite a strong, almost like a curry-like taste. I think it's is it cumin that you're thinking of? Yeah. Okay. All right. Good. All right. Can I try this again with you? Is that all right? I'm going to turn away again. Yeah. You could even go for the same one again. You can change it. Whatever you think. Okay. I'm going to turn back. Okay. All right. Now, again, to really sort of concentrate on what you're tasting, and this is like quite a kind of, I think, is it paprika that you're thinking of? Is that right? Yeah. Okay, so that's 2 down. Let's try and make it a bit harder. And this time we're going to go for a different sense. We're going to go for smell. I'm going to ask you, just bend down and just sniff one of them, okay? Okay, try not to get it all over your face, because that'll be a clue as to what you've gone for.
Done?
Okay, yep, sure, okay. Again, like I was saying before, I want you to really kind of imagine that smell. It's like a kind of Christmassy image I'm getting, is that right? Is that what you're thinking? Yeah? And it's cinnamon, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, brilliant.
Yes.
All right, good. Brilliant. Okay, all right, for the last one, I don't want you to smell it, I don't want you to taste it. I just want you to think of one of the spices, all right? Is there any way I could know what you're thinking of? I mean, realistically, no. Okay, good. I'm going to turn away. If you just point at the one you're thinking of, just so they know, just point at it, and I'll turn my back. Let me know when I can turn back. Hold on. So you're thinking of it now. I'm getting kind of a taste in my mouth already, weirdly. But it's one that's been chosen already, so I'm not sure if I'm right. Okay, I am right, good. So I think you're thinking of paprika again, is that right? Yeah. Is it quite strong though? I think it's cumin that you're thinking of, is that right?
Yeah.
It is? Brilliant. Yeah, 3 in a row. I think you've gone for ginger again, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah? Is that right?
I have no idea how he got it. He's definitely kind of shocked me.
We're just amazed, seriously.
I don't know.
That was just awesome. You can't really think of that. Someone reading my mind, you know, just awesome.
So, taste is tightly interwoven with the rest of the senses. But experimental chef Joseph Youssef is on a mission to prove that we can all experience symptoms of synesthesia when it comes to taste. Along with Charles Spence, Professor of Experimental Psychology at Oxford University, he's knocked up a comprehensive multisensory menu which in theory should have sense-shifting qualities in non-synesthetes. In this case, me.
Chin chin.
Joining me in this culinary adventure is genuine synesthete James Wannerton.
So sour.
He's an aficionado of flavour, and I'm fascinated to see how his experience compares to mine.
Cheers. Let's get it down the hatch. I think we're ready.
We've been promised that the main course will be a very touching experience.
Okay. Marinati dish. So, before you gobble it all down, I'm going to give you your something to play with.
So we've got a bit of Velcro, we've got a bit of smooth, we've got a bit of felt, okay?
What the chef recommends is that you fondle your cube while tasting the food from now on, and just see if you find any correspondence between what you're tasting, the textures in your mouth and on the plate, and the textures you have in your hand.
So can the rough texture of Velcro really alter the flavour of food?
What's it doing for you?
No, it enhances the nuttiness and the savouriness. That's nice.
Yeah? It makes it more nutty. Oh, wow. Did I just have my first synesthetic experience?
Interestingly, both James and I experienced the same changes in taste. Could I really be part synesthete?
Fantastic.
It makes a surprising amount of difference, that.
Does that for you? I would have thought there was enough going on in your brain.
Yeah, that's what I would have thought. That does make a massive difference.
Just enough room for dessert, and this time with a sprinkle of sonic seasoning.
Okay, gentlemen, your dessert. So what I'd like you to do is to put the headphones on, and then take a mouthful and think about the experience.
Chef Joseph and Professor Spence believe that music can actually enhance and alter taste sensations in non-synesthetes. Let's find out if they're right.
How's it for you, James?
This first track is intended to enhance the sweetness of the dish.
The different mix of textures. And that enhances it. It's sort of rich sounds, which goes with the chocolate. There's also something that's giving me the taste of pineapple, but it goes with everything there. It's absolutely brilliant. And there's different tones in there, different loudness, which affects it as well. That's incredible, that.
It seems synesthete James is the model test subject.
So if you're ready to continue with your dessert, I will change the sonic seasoning, and let's see what happens to the taste.
The next track is intended to induce a sour taste.
What's happened? I can see from the expression on your face you're not happy.
It just doesn't go. It doesn't go.
So what taste are you getting out of the sound this time?
I'm getting funnily enough, a slightly meaty taste. It just doesn't go.
I've heard of savoury chocolate dishes, but never meaty desserts. Can I hear the meaty sound?
It absolutely ruins it.
I've got to see what's going on here. For me, it's just right.
Oh, no.
Chimes and strings and it's like spa music. I feel like I should be having a shoulder rub.
Well, maybe next time. Professor Spence has observed that the majority of non-synesthetes do feel the desired effects, so maybe I'm just a bit of an oddbod. So now I myself have experienced that we can all have unusual multisensory experiences, but synesthesia takes this to an extraordinary level. Philippa Stampton has been on a mission to try and better understand her own unique form of synesthesia. She's keen to meet someone else with the same condition.
I'm arranging for her to meet someone who's not just a synesthete, but also a TV presenter and an extraordinary composer called LJ Rich.
LJ is a veritable ambassador for synesthesia. From the age of 3, she could use her abilities to flawlessly reproduce the music she heard on the radio. She was awarded a scholarship to attend the Royal College of Music at the tender age of 11.
Hello there, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you? Of course.
LJ's particular variety of synesthesia is quite different to Philippa's. For her, sights and tastes literally become music to her ears.
For example, if I'm on a train and I'm looking out the window and there's some beautiful trees sort of moving by, then that would probably create, well, I know it does actually, it creates music for me.
But
and if
what
I'm
kind
very
of music?
lucky, well, in the case of that, it was really beautiful, calming strings.
So it sounds like it adds to your experience of the world. Are there any examples of situations where it sort of holds you back, where it causes more trouble than it's worth?
Let me give you an example. If you're a chef, you're a professional chef, and you go to a restaurant which serves beautiful food and it's delicious, the fact that by being a chef and you can tell the ingredients and the cooking process and how it's been presented is not going to detract from how delicious the food tastes.
What about the taste of fish and chips? Does that conjure up other sensory experiences?
Oh, well, a fluffy chip is one of the great delights, and that is a beautiful G major. Oh, it's lovely.
A G major?
Yes, because a good potato is generally in G.
Clearly, LJ embraces her synesthesia, and using a bespoke audio setup, she's treating me to a trip inside her mind. In a similar way to how Philippa paints her aromatic experiences, LJ recreates the sounds produced by the visual world around her. I'm about to hear a representation of a bustling street with some additional real-time effects.
Are you ready?
I was born ready.
Different.
I feel like I'm in a flotation tank. Whoa, the echo is really cool.
That's basically how you can turn the world into music.
Sounds amazing.
But yeah, that's a little glimpse into
Thank
my
you
world.
for a taste. It was very calming.
Yes, well,
It was very calming.
It smooths off the edges of what could sometimes be quite a harsh, loud world.
Later on, we'll see what happens when our two synesthetes meet.
Can we experience LJ's specific form of auditory synesthesia? Well, our brains are constantly trying to match the sensory input with our memories of past experiences to make sense of the world.
Have a listen to this. It works best if you're listening with someone else. Now, I'm going to play a pair of tones, and I want you to think, do the tones go up in pitch or down in pitch? So what do you think? Did they go up in pitch or did they go down in pitch? The truth is neither. It's an auditory illusion. Try some more. Each pair of tones contains a mixture of high frequency and low frequency notes, but our brains have a preference for which ones are picked out. About half the people that hear them think they go up in pitch, the rest think they go down. This is called the tritone paradox, and according to psychologist Diana Deutsch, who discovered it, where you come from affects how you hear the tone transition. For example, most native speakers in Britain seem to hear the tritone paradox descending from a high pitch to low pitch, whilst North Americans tend to hear the identical pattern as ascending from low to high. Philippa Stanton has experienced synesthesia for as long as she can remember, and although it aids her art, she's always thought of it as some kind of developmental disorder. LJ also relies on her condition for creative inspiration. She sees it as a remarkable gift, and having been shown the world as she hears it, I can understand why. Philippa spent the morning painting the sound of the rain.
Hi. Hi. How are you doing?
Philippa.
I'm LJ. Lovely day, isn't it?
I know.
I fixed it for the two to meet in the hope that it will help Philippa to better understand her condition.
I saw your coffee pictures on your website, and I'm quite a fan of coffee. So it was rather lovely to see that some of the paintings and that feelings that you evoked made me kind of quite joyful.
Oh,
actually,
that's good.
that there is somebody else who experiences such deep changes with something that would normally look like, oh, one cup of coffee is a bit like another cup of coffee, but if you can taste
there
the
was
difference and
so
sense the
much
difference.
and also the aroma of coffee and the taste of coffee is so massively different visually.
It's mainly an E flat. Hello, we'd like somewhere warm, please.
So how has it changed how you do things in your life, or has it at all?
It's just this wonderful feeling of, hang on a minute, I can do things and maybe use what goes on in my head to perhaps uplift and entertain in a way that isn't conventional.
Yeah. It feels quite a relief somehow to meet and be with someone you know is experiencing it in a similar but different way.
If you have more than one modality when you are remembering something, so smell, taste, hearing, more than just sight, so touch as well, then that memory becomes more firm. It's easier to remember something if you do it with more than one modality. If you utilise other senses, think like a synesthete, I suppose, you can then maybe solve a problem that's really been annoying you.
I can see with LJ it's informing all elements of what she's doing. It's brilliant. Love it.
Cool. Well, I've really enjoyed watching you draw.
I just don't believe that synesthesia is as weird and odd as people think it is.
Synesthesia is a condition we're only just beginning to understand. And the reason it gets us neuroscientists so excited is because it tells us, as far as perception is concerned, there's not this strict one-to-one mapping between sensory input to sensory experience that we always thought was the case. As we've seen, lots of other sensory experiences can be triggered by stimulation in any one sensory brain area. But is this a design flaw or a design feature? Well, either way, it's pretty extraordinary, and I, for one, am extremely jealous. But there is some evidence that suggests it can confer an evolutionary advantage. Perhaps in the future, LJ and Philippa's powers will be coming to all of us somewhere further down our family tree.